blessed unity with the L-O-V-E. Love is the solution, so set your love free with the L-O-V-E. Further evolution and blessed unity.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Self-Love Show. I am your host, Dawn Light, and this is Trish Wright. And we lovingly deliver this show every week on Thursday morning at 10, and we're so grateful to be back. Here we are. Thank you for tuning in and watching. To all our lovely viewers, we have an amazing guest today that I'm going to let Trish introduce right now.
We're so happy to introduce Magick Bernstein. Thank you for joining us today, because we met Magick just a month ago, 2 months ago, right?
Yes.
Maybe October 31st, was that the one?
Oh yeah, my memory, time lives in a very interesting way. My brain.
3 months ago, yeah.
3 months ago we met
Is it
Magick.
really October? Wow. Feels
I
like
think so. Yeah.
So a few months ago we met Magick, and we were both so deeply touched that we wanted to have you on the show. And let me tell you a little bit about Magick and his life. So for 20 years, Magick Bernstein has been leading sacred site spiritual retreats, serving as a spiritual guide and sharing the ancient teachings of mysticism and unconditional love. His life has been a rare path, combining lauded entrepreneurial success in business and studying extensively and intimately with master spiritual teachers, elders, kahunas, shaman, and mystics. As such, Magick has dissolved the illusionary line between the spiritual and physical so that each of us can live in our full potential. Magick's unique approach is to create a powerful field of unconditional love and truth in which awakening, connection to the spirit world, and your higher self is exponentially amplified. I'll take a side of that. Like the whole entree, please. He does this in part with his unique storytelling style that is adventurous, playful, and often incredible. He shares magical and seemingly miraculous experiences which result in the everyday world of creating wealth, health, career, relationships, and deep connection with spirit and inner guidance. He transmits universal teachings on an energetic level which penetrate deep into participants, helping dissolve illusion and awaken them to the truth of who they are. He calls this a shamanic transmission. And welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here. I'm so excited to be here. It was great to be on the show with you guys some time ago, and now to be able to sit and chat with you about the Oneness Method and what it can do for people is quite a blessing. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so grateful you're here.
Yeah. What can the Oneness Method help with? So, I mean, behind the scenes, you literally dropped into a conversation that I was having about a big aha that I was in the middle of literally right now. Like last night, I had this place where I integrated a bunch of pieces in my life around the same spiritual curriculum, the piece of spiritual curriculum. So can it work with something like that, or is it, yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I called it, one of the reasons that I called it the Oneness Method is because my experience so far with it, and I reverse engineered this method from my life and from my work with clients. Oftentimes that's how I come up with teachings, is I look back and I go, well, how am I doing this? And then I go, oh, I do it this way, and I do it that way, and I do it this way, and then I can end up codifying it into something that's more teachable. So I called it the Oneness Method because my experience, and as I've worked with clients over the years, is that it is one method for just about any application. So it can be used for something like you're talking about, where you've got a lot going on and you're trying to integrate many different things and process them and come up with some output like your curriculum. It can be used to process emotions, past wounds, traumas, although with trauma, I tend to caution people to work with me rather than themselves, unless they have a lot of experience with working with trauma. It can be used if you want to manifest something. It can be used if you would like to have a connection with your higher self and be able to be guided by something greater than yourself in any given moment. It can be used to enhance and flame on your psychic senses. And what I really love most about it is I kind of categorize these things into things. So I call it our humanity, which is sort of like how to be a better human being, you know, how to have what we want in life and how to be more loving and kind and those sort of things. And then I call this other category our divinity, which is how, you know, our greater journey here, to wake up to the divinity that we are, to realize ourselves as God. And it also can do that. And the cool thing is it can actually be doing the humanity part and the divinity part at the same time, which is
gorgeous.
I like this technique versus more traditional transformational techniques, which are typically only working with our psychology and our psyche. And so we're becoming a better egoic person, but we may not, through those techniques, be actually waking up to our true nature. And the Oneness Method is doing both all at the same time because it's a true embodiment technique. And the body is the place where we wake up to who we really are and we become our authentic selves. Sorry, I know it's a long answer. Actually, it's a short answer for me, so I'm trying to be concise.
It was so gorgeous to hear, and I really resonate with it. Like that's it, right? The learning to embody it, and it's not just in the mind. Like a lot of people can get caught thinking that, you know, it's just the mind that we work with, our psyche, to really break down like the patterns and what's gone on in our world, in our life, in our curriculum, in our childhoods, you know, but it's so much more. It's like integrating it deeply and embodying it. So yeah, it's beautiful to hear that you integrate the two.
Yeah, my experience actually is that I think of the mind and the thoughts that we have and the psyche and the psychology as flowers of a plant. And so when we work at that level of mind, we are working at that level of cutting a flower off of the top of a plant. So another flower just grows. Versus if we track down the stem to the root, which to me, what I found, the root is actually the energetic, emotional imprint that is living in our body. That's where the source of the thoughts is. The thoughts are like the flowers growing. They're sprouting out from this deeper place inside of us, which is the source inside of our body. So when we get in the body, which means physical body, energetic body, emotional body, when we're embodied fully, those things start to empty because the source starts to heal. Being in the body, our emotional system is kind of like the digestive system. It's one of the systems of the body. When we eat something, then there's a process where the salivary glands start to eject saliva. It starts to break down the food. It goes down into our intestines. There's a whole process of it getting broken down and nutrients getting separated out and used by the body. And then eventually we eliminate the waste, right? Our emotional system works similarly, but for it to work, we have to be in the body, just like we have to chew the food, right? If we swallow it whole, it's not going to digest very well. Being in the body allows emotions to process through and then get eliminated out. All of our experience, not just emotions, all of our experience, and particularly loss, which is the source of all of our wounds and trauma. It's a loss from love, from unconditional love. We get separated from that by things that happen with our parents and our culture and our teacher and our government, where they act in ways that are not loving and kind. That creates a wound, which is the loss. It's the separation from what we truly are, unconditional love. So every time we have those experiences, if we're embodied, then we just feel them. They may not be comfortable necessarily, but we feel them, and then they get pooped out. They empty out. But for most of us, we haven't been feeling. No one taught us that. In fact, we're doing the opposite. We're avoiding our feelings. We're avoiding what's happening inside of our body, and we escape. As Carl Jung said, neurosis is when we escape into the mind to avoid what he called legitimate suffering. Right? So the age of reason came around and we deified thought and reasoning, and now most of us live up here in the mind, and it's not the place where we can resolve the issues, and it's exacerbating the issues.
Yep.
So we need to be in the body.
Yes.
And that's primary, the oneness technique, in the steps, and there are steps, one of the essential steps that's always there is get in the body.
Absolutely.
Out of the mind, into the body.
I'm a big proponent of that. Anybody who's, my company's called Embodied Happiness, right? And it's not necessarily like have to be happy, but it moves towards that direction when you actually start to drop in. I've been studying with a woman named Suze Engler for a few years now, and she's what was it's embodied Gestalt work. So there's Gestalt, and then it's all silent. So you're emoting through your body and telling a story. And that's one of my most favorite and helpful things that I've learned in the last few years. It's like, wow, I can just like, And what I've also learned is I don't know. And I'd love to just stop for a second and say hi to all the viewers, our viewers right now who are watching. Say hi to everyone and say, like, do you have any questions for Magick, or do you have anything that when you here, let me slow down. I'm excited. When you actually drop into your body and when you allow yourself to feel, what happens for you? And I'd love to, because we have Magick here and we can ask him questions and we can really like live communicate this whole thing, like what happens for you? And I invite you to type it into the comment box. Or if you're listening to this, just, I invite you to later on send us an email. You can find that anywhere. So for me, what I find is that if it's a strong piece of my curriculum, that I have a tendency, my body will automatically start trauma shaking. Like it'll start trembling. And if I give it time to actually, like if I'm like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and actually create the space to do that, that what will happen for me is a faster integration. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I certainly know what you're talking about. I found, I've gone through, I'd say, phases with this. I found maybe about 15 years ago, I started discovering that if I really connected with what was going on, that there's movement that wants to happen inside my body. Particularly like often fear wants to shake, it wants to move slightly. Sometimes for me, like real sadness wants to kind of curl up into a ball, or it wants to be expressed outwardly through yelling or sound. And anger certainly wants to make sound and sometimes wants to hit something and move. And all of that movement has been really powerful for me, as well as connected sound. So taking the breath and taking it right into the place wherever I feel the most, and then allowing that sound to come out, and doing that with consistency and getting that into like a constant sound really helps me to connect and move energy. These days, I don't have that as much. I'm often more sitting in silence because I learned that I can actually hold all of that without the movement, and sometimes that's very powerful in and of itself too, because it helps teach me how to do it in the world so that I can actually be feeling whatever's present 100% of the time, all the time, not just when I'm in my room with the doors closed where I'm able to yell and make movements. And that's still important sometimes. So it just is sort of like in the moment what's needed.
I love that. I just want to answer the question. Can you share more specifically what are the steps of the oneness process? That will come later in the show. Right now, this is just a conversation about how it helps, what it can do for you, and really give us an opportunity to really go deep with each other, the three of us, and with you who are listening and watching. I've been making this kind of joke, but it's really true recently about my work with Dawn. And I'm like, oh, we get our couples therapy today. It kind of is like
So true.
drop in whether we're doing work with each other, like our own work, or if we have someone coming in to share with us, like Magick or anybody, any of the guests that we've had on the show. It's like we do so much deep work that we have, like, it's couples therapy. And I love to
It initiates like the next level of our own spiritual curriculum to kind of come forward and work on new pieces that come in after we have a really powerful conversation on the show. It's like a window. It opens up like a door or a window to like explore new avenues. It's interesting how it works. So that's what she means by couples therapy. And I was like, you know what? Actually, that really resonates.
It's so cute. And I'd like to just, put it out in the world that couples coaching and couples therapy, whether it's with your friend or with a colleague or your boss or your partner or anybody you have close relationship with, like, let's normalize that, because I think that's important,
I so agree with that, Trish. I find that I have all kinds of clients, business clients who are business partners, couples, friends, also conscious uncoupling clients. And, they don't have to have lots of problems in their relationship to benefit from having a third party who is objective, who is trained in how to see the patterns and the communication deficiencies and be able to coach and bring people into a higher level of relating. And any relationship can benefit from that. We all have places where our conditioning and our history gets activated and we're not operating at the level of unconditional love and consciousness that we would like to be. So to have somebody be able to reflect that to us and show us, and for me personally, when it's me that's the coach, be able to actually transmit the shift and the healing and the unconditional love so that they change right before my eyes and the relationship is completely different when they walk out the door. I mean, who
Right.
doesn't benefit from that? So thank you for saying that, because there is some stigma in the culture in general around, therapy and coaching, because it's actually relatively new. Psychology is only 150 years-ish old. And so, and again, our culture has been trained over the years to not examine our inner reality and to really just be we're a material culture. Materialism is the basic philosophy that we've been living in for quite a few hundred years now.
I think like most about this experience with Dawn is that we're not actually working on so the difference between coaching with a previous lover and coaching with Dawn, like the couples coaching in this section, is like I get to do my work alongside her, that I'm not actually, even though we're not coming in with problems and we're not working on our relationship like specifically, we're doing our work together, and it's often hand in hand. Like whatever she's working on, I'm either right there with her or on a different facet of that. And it's really amazing feeling. Like, wow, if you feel alone in your process and your work, get a friend to go to couples counseling with or couples coaching, because then you're like, we can do this together. And then you feel like you have a team. I mean, that's why people go to group, coaching sessions or group therapy sessions, because then there's like a whole group of people that you're like integrating all this work with. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it was like for me when I attended USM. I was in a room with like 300 people, and you would stand up and share intimately on a microphone your deepest, most intense things that have ever occurred, and get a full transmission from my teachers around it, and it would impact the entire room. And then we would all break off and do trios from there. And so the trio process is exactly what is going on in this dynamic as well. And if for our viewers, I'll explain what a trio process is. And I do this in my own coaching in like the program we are about to launch. Actually, the trio process is like, facilitator chair, client chair, and neutral observer. And you rotate through all of 3 of those positions so that you can see the patterning. And even though each person's content might be different, it's their own experience, life curriculum arising, but it's always a different facet of the same pattern. And you get to see it. And you have aha moments sometime witnessing and going, oh my gosh, that's how my brother felt, or oh my gosh, that's how my dad felt, or oh my gosh, and you get to see like a different angle while you're deeply working this curriculum, because it shows up, the pattern will show up in a polarity of light and dark, right? And that's the whole thing of cleansing the lens of perception and getting out of the ego's identification of that spectrum and rising and breaking the lens, cleansing the lens of perception so that you can really break through and live and embody into your authentic self and not have to relate through that lens anymore of right and wrong, good and bad, black and white.
That's beautiful. I also love that when working with others, people often realize that they're not alone in their patterns and their thoughts, and they get to see that others have similar patterns and similar thoughts, and it's just a human thing, and it normalizes our psyche and some of the things that people carry shame about, that they have certain thoughts or behaviors, and we all have them. And I really feel like from first grade on, we should have a class in human relating and psychological development. And it should be something that we're going through all the way through school. It's amazing to me that something so essential and so important is completely left out of our system and most people's lives.
And honestly, that's, what's so profound about what you're just saying is I firmly agree with you. And the most amazing thing, the reason why I chose the program that I intended through USM is actually it's bringing soul back into psychology, which psychology is really taking the perspective of like devoid soul. And so when you bring soul back in, that's learning to fully embody all of it, right? The authentic self. Hi, Bill. Like Bill was one of my classmates. Hi. So he's saying hi on the show. So just wanted to say hi. But yeah, that was really coming forward for me and really deeply resonated because it addresses it all parts, as I can love all the parts of myself.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, that's like, when I started to teach and do transformational work in 1996, I found that I ended up on what was kind of a split path. Like I had the teachers and the work that I was doing to improve my life and improve my psychology and to have behaviors that I wanted and emotional inner world that I wanted and reactions that I wanted and to create what I wanted, manifesting. At the same time, I was in this other mystery school where I was discovering that, everything is God and that I'm light and love and self-realization is God and that I'm everything. And they felt a little separate. And so that's why part of, I think, how my whole oneness method came about was I really knew they weren't separate. And somehow they started to come together for me and become one. And they are one. The material world and everything in reality is all part of the one. And we break everything down and separate it in the world and in psychology. And we work at just this level of psychology and the mind and the mental plane. And that keeps us separate from our true nature. If we just realize our infinite nature, our divinity, there's not anything else that we actually need. Everything else is an illusion. I like there's an old song that says, looking for love in all the wrong places. And I think it's about like maybe going into a bar or something, right? But when I think of that song, I think of people looking for love in partners, looking for love in their family, looking for love in their pets, looking for love in their jobs. And that's actually not the place where we can find the kind of love that we're truly seeking at the depth of our being, which is actually the unconditional love that we are.
Exactly.
That's what we're truly seeking. And so if a body of work is not actually having that as part of its core, then it's just a part of the one, and it can never bring anybody true freedom or true happiness.
Gorgeous. Well said.
Thank you.
The integration of all.
Yeah, integration of all, and which when we bring unconditional love to any of our wounds, that's actually what heals them. When we bring, because the wounds are just separation.
Yes.
Any experience that we're having of being separate from unconditional love, from the infinite, from God, from divinity, that's just a wound. It's the wound of humanity. It's part of the journey here as a human, and therefore our journey here is to resolve all those wounds and to realize our true nature. And in that, a lot of attachments fall away. A lot of what we think we need falls away. A lot of that I'll be happy when, and you fill in the blank, that most people are living, I'll be happy when, falls away. And we realize that everything that we are, everything we could be, everything we would be, anything that we could want or desire is actually already here. And everything that we're pointing to outside of ourselves is temporary. Any relationship you could be in, any object you could have, any experience you could have in life is all temporary by nature. Everything ends. Everything in this material 3D world ends. So when you're grabbing for that to be your source of happiness, you're doomed to be on a roller coaster ride, because it's going to come and go. Even conditional love, with people comes and goes. You fall in and out of it. But the unconditional love that we truly are always has been and always will be. By the law of thermodynamics, love cannot be created or destroyed. You were never born, and you will never die at the level of your divinity. Now, and nothing matters in that realm. Nothing that happens in this material realm matters at all when we are our divinity. Paradoxically, we are also embodied. We're here on earth. And if I, punch you in the face right now, it's going to matter. You were born, and you're going to die, and you're going to experience loss, lots of it. The longer you live, the more loss you're going to experience. So how do we embody our divinity where nothing matters, and our humanity where it matters at the exact same time? That's the Oneness Method. That's my work.
Gorgeous. Beautiful. Bill says, how do you stay present to your divinity in this very human place?
That's a great question. So it depends is the answer, right? So kind of two approaches that I have to going inside and doing this work is, one could go inside and one can look for their divinity, because everything's an inside job. Whatever's going on inside of you is what is reflected outside of you. Somebody who's really embodying their divinity fully and completely may not see the world the same way that we're seeing it when we're not in that. So to go inside and close your eyes and to look for and to scan for, like, where inside of me can I find unconditional love right now in this moment? Where can I find divinity right now, or light, or however you experience that? And then to put all your attention on that. Like, where attention flows, energy goes and things grow. So you put your attention there, and now that's where your attention is. Like, your attention determines the quality of your life. So where is your attention? So if you can do that, and in moments we can, then that's the sort of simplest, fastest approach to the answer to Bill's question, right? But sometimes I go inside and there isn't that divinity that I can find so easily. Sometimes I have a lot of humanity that's up. There's things happening in the world that are activating and triggering me, or with my partner or whoever. And so that's what's alive. So then actually what's interesting is the path to realizing your divinity is to go right into what seems to be not your divinity. Mm-hmm. Everything is your divinity. So if you go into the pain, you go into the fear, you go into the anger, you go into the judgments, the guilt, the shame, whatever's present, and you feel it somatically in your body, and you work through what we're going to lay out as the Oneness Method later, to that place of where you become one with it. At that point, you are it, and you are in divinity, but you're experiencing humanity. And then the humanity part is healing. Everything that has you in resistance to what is healing through that process. Because my definition of suffering is just the resistance to what is.
Yes.
Right? So when I'm embodying my pain or my fear or whatever it is, it actually feels good because I'm 100% being me. I'm 100% here. I'm embodied. And that actually feels good. Or, at its ultimate level, it doesn't have any good or bad. Like actually the idea that any feeling that we have is good or bad is actually made up by the mind. The mind divides reality. It separates things and categorizes things so it can understand and navigate this world. So the idea that anything's good or bad is just created here. Many of us can look back at something that happened and see, I thought it was bad at the time and ended up being good, or I thought it was good and ended up being bad. It's all just the mind putting these labels on it. So when the mind is gone, which is what happens when you become one with things, then that's not there anymore and things just are. So it just is. And that's unconditional love. Unconditional love isn't actually a feeling. It's actually the experience of, it's unexplainable because it's like, it's emptiness, it's nothingness, it's suchness. So anyway, that's the long answer to Bill's question. The very short version, which is typically the way people are going to find their way in, is to go into exactly the very thing that you maybe aren't liking at the moment, or that feels uncomfortable, or that you're resisting, and become one with that. And that takes you right into your divinity.
Yeah, we call that like leveraging it, leveraging your awakening, right? Where you lean into like the most difficult. Like for me, for instance, through school, like I entered with the intention to really work the most difficult relationship I ever had, because there's the deeper teachings, right? There's the curriculum, the soul's curriculum in my lifetime. And so that relationship was my father. So I went in and really deeply worked that energy line for 2 years straight. And I had massive amounts of awakening and breakthroughs and dissolving very, very difficult curriculum that I had struggled with for 45 years of my life. And I literally was like, am I going to carry this for the rest of my life? I really was wondering that at some certain points, even though I had completely approached it from the angle of forgiveness, because I firmly believe that forgiveness dissolve things. I know that. But for some reason, it was so difficult to leverage on my own that I was like, I really am stepping in with the deep intention to navigate this. And I'm so thankful that I gave myself that sacred gift, because now in turn, I do this very thing for my clients, like really just help them unwind where they've been stuck. And so it's beautiful to know that anything that's challenging in your life is an opportunity, and you can leverage it for your complete liberation, because it's just a barrier that's been built against love, and love is seeking itself through you as expansion.
Totally. Thank you. Exactly. That's beautiful. Yeah, we are, I'm just moved by what you said, so I have to pause for a moment. It's really lovely.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to just point out something that for people who are in the middle of something, or who have just started their journey to their, looking deeper, that Dawn did say that she committed 2 years, consistent 2 years, literally like she was on it every day for 2 years around her relationship with her father. And that's when there was opening to it. And now she's on the other side, right? So for anybody who's out there listening and like, why can't I move through this? It just takes time. It takes consistency. It takes love. And it just takes you being with, right? So I just want to...
Okay, sorry.
No, I just wanted to put that out there, because I feel like our communities are like, well, sometimes the idea that, yes, nothing matters and it's all empty and meaningless until we decide what we want to create meaning into, can be really disenchanting. And when it's like, well, this is just a belief, like there's people who are still kind of stripping away at the places where unconditional love still can't be felt, right? And I think that just giving people the opportunity to know that wherever they're at is also a really good place to be. You're perfect where you are. Keep going. This is me being a cheerleader. You keep going. You're doing it. Keep going. You're doing it. Yay! If it gets hard in there, reach out to your coaches and your friends. Do some cool things with people. Like, really support you.
I want to chime in on something you just said, Trish, because I think it's really important. I want to emphasize it. A lot of people want instant change. You know, they just want, oh, I sat down and I worked on this for 10 minutes and, you know, it's not changed yet. And, you know, sometimes I have the experience where I get the blessing of something just changing. You know, I have a shamanic experience. I have a mystical experience. I take people to sacred sites. I take them to vortexes that are activators. They're amplifiers. They're places where the veils are thinner, where multidimensionality exists. I mean, I do that in my work too. And so in my work and these sites, sometimes change can happen instantly. I sat with somebody with brain cancer who couldn't speak because she had the language centers of her brain where the tumor was. And I did 30 minutes of work with her and she started speaking again and her brain tumor shrunk to half its size. That stuff happens in my work. And that is more the exception than the norm. That's sort of like, okay, well, you had me working with you and we had that one miracle breakthrough, but really what transformation and spiritual awakening requires most of the time is consistent, dedicated, ongoing work. It's sitting down and being with yourself, being with the stuff that's uncomfortable.
I just want to like put a pin in that. Like if you were listening just now, write that down, go back, write that down, put it somewhere, right? Ding, because that's a huge piece.
I don't know anybody, like people are like, I have a pretty good life and people are like, oh yeah, I want what you're having. And it's like, but they want it somehow instantly. It's like, okay, well, here's what you do. Here's the path. But most people don't want to do that. If you think of it as an investment, right? When I invest the time to do the work, my quality of life is going to get better tomorrow or next month or next year, however long it takes. Because like Dawn, I've had processes that have been, you know, a year or 2 years of every day sitting and doing some work, sometimes feeling like it's not even moving. It's like, exactly. I know it's moving. Sometimes it's like titration, where in the experiment in chemistry where you have two clear beakers of clear substances and you take a drop of one and you put it in the other one and nothing happens. And you do that like 99 times and it appears like nothing's happening. And then you put the 100th drop in and the whole beaker turns a different color because, you know, and it looks like it was just that last drop that did it, but it was actually all 100 drops.
Exactly.
Sometimes we can't see it when it's happening. So go ahead, Tom.
I just feel called to say this to our viewers. What if you could actually start leaning into your life and looking at every difficult thing that arises as an opportunity to leverage your personal freedom inside of your curriculum, instead of pushing against it with resistance and saying, oh, too hard, too much, I've already done my work in that area. What if you could wildly lean in and go, oh, I'm going to be curious here. What's left here for me to learn?
Yes.
I can see through the lens of self-love and acceptance here, because obviously the difficult piece is here for me to learn still. So I'm going to lean in and love it and learn from it instead of push against it. Bam, your life is going to change like nobody's business when you start leaning into everything that arises that's difficult, because it's a call to your soul to learn and love and accept and really leverage your spiritual awakening.
Every difficulty that you are having, thank you, that's so beautiful. Every difficulty that you are having is a call inside of yourself for love. It's a place that there's contraction and density, which is causing you to have thoughts and feelings that you don't like or want. And instead of fighting with it and trying to avoid it and suppress it and move it around and put your attention somewhere else where it just stays in place and it just haunts you from that unconscious place, coming out with thoughts and feelings at moments you don't want them, what it's calling for is you to get closer with it, for you to become more intimate with it. That's what then heals it. That's what then brings you more peace in your mind and body. And so the quality of your life improves by being with that which is uncomfortable. It's the opposite of what most of us are thinking and feeling and doing. So it's a retraining, it's a rehabituation, which is why working with a coach, working with someone who does this every day already in their life and helps other people do it is so essential, because we're actually trying to undo so much programming and conditioning that I believe goes all the way back to when we were cavemen and women. And we didn't have the time to do this work. We had to be in uptime all the time or we'd get eaten by the tiger. So there was no time to sit around and process your emotions. You, for survival, had to be alert and aware all the time. And that's in our hind brain. It's deep in there as a survival instinct to not drop in and just be with our bodies. But we're in an evolution of human consciousness and human being. And that evolution is calling us to actually realize that we don't actually have to do that. Actually, we're way more empowered and way more able to actually interact with threats in the world when we're embodied and we're feeling and being with ourselves, and we're emptying everything that would be in the way of that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's worth it. I'm telling you at home, it's worth it. You will feel better, think better. Your life will get better. You'll have more synchronicities, more manifestation, more ease, more peace if you get closer and more intimate with the very thing that you don't like about yourself and what you find inside.
And that's the cool thing about intimacy, is that like we kind of project that intimacy is only to be had with others, and to become more intimate with oneself and one's beliefs and one's pains. Really, like that's a piece, that's the transformative piece that moves things forward. And then you can have, you're again building the capacity to be with others. So if you can be with your own pain, you can be with others' pain too. And that's love.
To emphasize that and say it a little differently, and the same thing, just to add some flavor and texture to what you just said. If you cannot be intimate with yourself, which means the closer you are with your feelings and what's going on inside of you, the more intimate you are with it, then you cannot be intimate with others. So it is essential, if you want intimacy with lovers, partners, parents, children, family members, whoever, friends, that you learn how to be intimate with yourself. And that means not through the realm of thought. Just want to emphasize, most of us, when we try to figure out, how do I do all this? We're like trying to resolve the problem at the level the problem was created, which is thought. 99% of your thoughts are neurosis. They are an escape from feeling in the body, and they're not needed. So our mental body, like our emotional body, is just one of our systems. It's like our immune system, our endocrine system, and it has hijacked the captain's chair and taken over our lives, right? How would it be if your endocrine system hijacked the captain's chair? Like, your life would be a mess. Right? That's what's happened. Our mental body has hijacked the captain's chair. It's not supposed to be in the captain's chair. It's supposed to be one of our parts that just comes online when it's needed, which it is needed at times. So when we get in the body, this is our vehicle here on earth. This is like the central operating system when we're just embodied. Then thoughts come when they're needed. Endocrine system does what it's needed. Everything works. But the thing is, you have to actually let go of control. The mind feels like it needs to be in control. We have to let that go. Let go and let God. Like, let go and let the emptiness of all that is. Let go and let unconditional love. Let go and let the love and light that we are run and steer our lives, instead of the egoic personality that thinks it knows what we need to do. That is not an easy thing that I'm, putting out there.
It's the master addiction, actually.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the ultimate place to get to. You know, awakening is not a process of like accumulating things and getting things like the egoic mind thinks it is. Awakening is a demolition job.
Yeah.
It's actually dissolving.
I love that.
Exactly. Like all of our attachments, everywhere where we think something outside of ourselves is where it's at. It's like releasing and letting go of all of that until we just let go into the expansive infiniteness of all that we are. And then there is like this divine blueprint of our soul here on earth that will just be lived. Like we will just be lived by our soul if we can let go and trust that. But in order to do that, we have to be with every part of us that doesn't trust, every part of us that thinks that it's our ego that needs to do it, every part of us that's afraid of what will happen if we do that, afraid we won't get what we want, afraid we won't be happy. We just need to be with that fear, become one with that. And it brings us into what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Now, I think about evolution a lot, and you brought this in, like the caveman section. Is that so? So if you're, I'm sitting here thinking about like, wow, you know, we've as a culture, a global culture, have idolized over many, many years logic and stoicism, which has really disconnected us from our spirit and our body. So now we idolize, you know, higher education. We idolize that instead of this place where like the process of the body and a process of the spirit and the full integration of all those pieces. So we've like chopped our heads off at the neck and been like, well, this is how it is. Instead of really just allowing each one of us to drop in, to feel the unconditional love that we do have, that we are feeling the unconditional love that we are. Like it's so important to really allow yourself to drop into
The human race is kind of like a 4-year-old in our evolutionary stage, right? So there's certain stages where things happen, and so it's okay that during our evolutionary stage we temporarily deified the mind and started worshiping it and thinking, I think therefore I am, as Descartes said, and the whole age of reason came. And it is true that our powerful analytical mind does make us a distinguished and different creature on the earth than most others, as we know them anyway. It is a powerful part of us, but we got stuck there. We got stuck in that place, and therefore it, as I was saying, it's taken the commander's seat and taken control, and now it's up to each and every one of us to wake up out of that illusion that the mind is where it's at. The mind is actually a distraction from where it's at. It's actually an escape from where it's at. And the body is actually our vehicle here on the planet to operate at optimal levels and to actualize who we really are and to be our authentic selves. I mean, maybe some of the viewers here have noticed that if you really drop in and notice your thoughts, most of them are bullshit. Most of your thoughts are they're random. They're not true. They're thinking about this and that and comparing and going into the past and going into the future. Like they're not actually really relevant and real to your life, especially when you have fears. You know, how 99% of the time, 99.9% of the time, when I've had worry or fear, it doesn't happen, right? So if that's like an advisor. If you had an advisor that when you listen to this advisor, 99.9% of what they said was like nonsense, didn't make sense, was confusing, was about fear and doubt and things that didn't happen, would you continue to listen to that advisor? Like, no, but we sit there and we keep trying to sort through the 99.9% for the 0.1%, rather than just say, oh, maybe that's not where my attention needs to be.
Well, can I explain this a little bit for our viewers too? Is that so our human brains, which is it's a pretty inefficient machine. Our human brain is kind of inefficient. Like this is how I think about it. I love it, but it runs thought patterns. So when you're in your early childhood, you're developing ways to move through the world, right? So you're watching your parents relate, you're creating like, oh, this is how the world looks. This is how the world looks.
Which is pretty, it's a pretty inefficient.
So we're really looking at, we're creating these things when we're even pre-verbal, right? And so that becomes a neural pathway. And like Dawn said, is neural pathways are what is addiction. Like, we create chemicals. We also name the chemicals that go through our brain. So, oh, I feel fear around this, and this is, I'm not going to get fed. Like, we name it like that. And then instead of processing the fear, we process the thought. So every time we feel the fear in our body, we're processing, oh God, I'm not going to get fed. Now, like that as a child, when you don't have actual choice, when you can like move through the world, like that right there is terrifying, because you could be whatever it could be. You could be, you know, like, oh, this means that it's going to be good and I'm going to be happy. This means that it could be, and we name those things. So those are your thoughts, whatever you've created as a child, as to name that chemical that goes through your brain. And then as we drop into our body, we can process the feeling without attaching to the definition that you've given it. Right? Does this make sense?
Yeah. No, this is great. So, you know, the Oneness Method has like all these nuances and subtleties to how to do it well. And one of them is at the point in the process when you go into the body and you connect with what's really happening there, is to track the sensations in the body without labeling those sensations, right? So it's like somebody's, you know, I have somebody who's thinking about getting a divorce. They're not sure what to do. And our intention is to have their higher self come and you know, connect with their higher self and move from that place. So we set an intention to do that, and they drop into the body, and it's the next step is, so what's present there. And so maybe they feel something that they call fear, right? And I'm like, okay, great. Let's let go of the idea that it's fear. And where does this experience that you're having live in your body? Oh, it's in my belly. Okay, great. Now let's get into the qualities of it so you can get more and more and more in touch with what's actually there, rather than your mind's interpretation of those sensations, which is what you're calling fear. It's just a label that's separating experience so you can know what that means. But as you said, Trish, then your mind is making all this stuff up about it, and you're stuck in the mind. So go in there and, oh, well, it's like this football-shaped thing in my belly, and it's moving a little bit, and it's warm, and it has some weight to it, and it feels like kind of rough. And so now you're talking about sensations that don't have the mind engaging with them, and then you can be with them for what they really are, rather than for whatever the mind might be making up about them.
It seems like a great segue to share the oneness process.
Great. So I'm not quite sure how to share it. I think maybe I'll just like talk about the different steps, and
Right on you.
oh, okay. So, and you guys can chime in though as you want to. I'm just going to sort of lay them out. Maybe I'll lay them out step by step, and then we can go into whatever one seems most interesting to you guys to talk about. The first couple of steps are optional. Because it's one method for just about anything. The first step is to set an intention. And some people are not really wanting to set intentions because they're really living in a lot of divinity, and they're living in flow. And so the egoic mind is often the part that's setting the intention. But even for those, sometimes setting an intention is important. What is it that you want from the process? Do you want to resolve something that's a challenge in your life? Is there a big decision you're making that you want the truth about, so you want guidance from spirit? Do you want to manifest something, so you're intending, I want to create something in my life? Do you have a physical disease? The technique can be used for physical disease. So I want to heal this disease, or I want to heal this childhood wound that's affecting my relationship. So you set that intention, and then step two is you launch that intention. And I have a specific process for how to actually send that intention out to the universe in a powerful way. Those two are optional. The next step in the process is to actually go into the body, scan the body for what's present and alive, and to just be with it. And just a note, if you want your higher self to give you information here, or you're wanting to manifest something, when you scan the body, what you're likely going to experience is what's in the way of that. And most people get stopped there and they think they're doing it wrong because, well, I wanted to have my higher self give me insight, and what's here is fear. Well, that's part of what's in the way of your higher self connecting with you. So what's needed is to just be with that fear. So whatever is in the body, no need to label it, no need to understand it. You just track it at this point and find where am I feeling sensations in the body. That's the next step. The fourth step is what I call the somatic mantra. This is where you take all of your attention, all of your focus, and place it on the sensations that are in your body. So when we have a typical mantra, it's a sound, Om. You might focus on Om or Om Mani Padme Om. And every time you have a thought, you come back to that mantra and you just stay with it. This is a somatic mantra. So if that football, for example, is in the body, that's got those different qualities to it, now I'm going to just place 100% of my attention there and leave it there. And so that's the next step. Now, if all you do, this whole process is the process of unconditionally loving what is. It's bringing your loving presence to what's happening in your field, whether it's physical, energetic, or emotional. So as I talk about the rest of the steps, they're all loving what is. They're just different sort of ways to do it. And there isn't one that's better than the other, although the later steps will accelerate your process, possibly. So if all you do is just stop right here and you just be with whatever's present somatically in your energetic, physical, or emotional body, that's enough to bring you into full resolution of whatever's there and or into experiencing your divinity. There is more steps, though, if you can naturally move into them, or it feels like it's beneficial for you in order to help activate whatever's in the way of you resolving this. So the next step would be, and for some people this step is challenging, and for some people it's easy, to fully accept those sensations just as they are, without trying to change them, without trying to do something different to them. This is a spiritual step. Can I actually be with myself just as I am? Can I wake up in reality just as it is without this notion that there's something to fix or that I'm broken and I need to be different? It's like, no, I am infinite. I am God. I am divinity just as I am, even with these wounds. So can I be with them just as they are? That's the step that I call acceptance. Step 5. Step 6 is sort of another level of that, which is loving what is. So now I'm going to go into the active intention of bringing unconditional love to what's here, to these sensations. And then the final step is simply to, well, actually, sorry, there's 2 more steps. The next step is to become one with those sensations. So you're not just loving them, but now you're going to close the gap between the meditator and what you're meditating on, between the egoic mind noticing that there's something there and the thing that it's noticing. You close that gap until you are one with those sensations. And when we do that, there are levels of oneness that can occur, even though that's kind of an oxymoron because oneness can't be divided. But in order to teach, division is helpful. So at that point, you could become one with this particular wound that you're working on, this football. That's one level. You, through that portal or doorway, you may become one with everything that is you, all of your sensations, all of your thoughts and feelings, and everything that makes up this unique being of you. That's another possible sort of part of oneness you could experience. And then eventually you could experience the whole enchilada, that you are one with all that is. There's no separation between you and anything else. The final step of the process would be just to abide wherever you are in the process, just to be there, to stay there. And there's lots of nuances to this, and it's a little different if you're working on your inner guidance versus a wound versus manifesting. And there's things that can come up in the process, like memories and things that there's nuances of, but that's the basic process. Maybe it's not so basic, but that's kind of the general outline of what one would do. And the simplified form of this is just actually when you're feeling something that is part of your humanity that you're in separation from, that's challenging you, that's difficult in your life, just drop in and find it in your body and be with it. That's the simplified version. Or again, the intention for this process can be to go into your divinity. So it can be, find your divinity, find the unconditional love that you already are, and just drop in and find that, how that's showing up in sensations in the body, and be with that.
We like to have an expression from USM called flooding with loving. So just imagine yourself flooding yourself with loving and light. And that opens the gateway to you experiencing yourself as love.
Yeah, that's beautiful. There are lots of little tricks along the way. That's in my stage 6, which is loving what is. So I have these things I call training wheels, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't know, what do you mean love yourself, Magick? What are you talking about? How do I love myself? What does that look like? And the thing that I can't do is actually answer that question for you, because it's actually unique for every person, how they love themselves. I can give you examples, and I can transmit unconditional love to you that starts to activate and awaken that in you, and then you start to experience it through that. But one of the training wheels is like you just said, Dawn, it's like just find ways that you do know how to love, which is typically conditional love. And that's okay, because that's a training wheel to unconditional love. Think of an animal that you love. Think of a puppy or a baby or something, and then take that, or light, or something that represents love to you, words, and send it to those parts of you, to those sensations inside of you. I like your flooding with loving, right? And flood it with love, or just flood your existence with love. Forget about parts that you're disconnected from or that are in dissonance. In the divinity part, just go in and find love somehow, and then start to expand it and start to send it into yourself. It's beautiful.
I'm just loving your process so much. I can see how much it helps so many people. It's really gorgeous to hear. And I can see and I acknowledge how passionate you are to share this work. It's beautiful.
I am definitely passionate about it. It's definitely, and it's not something that I need to do or have to do or want to do. It's just like, it just is what I do. And the impact that I experience and see with people every time pretty much we do this work, their lives change radically. I had a woman the other day who was working on something very material, because people come with spiritual intentions. So people come and I want to experience myself as God. I don't care about this material world. And so we do that. And some people come and like this one woman, and she's like, I've been bankrupt twice. I'm always in tens of thousands of dollars of debt. I'm having multiple jobs. I'm paycheck to paycheck. I'm in my 50s, and this is how my life has been my whole life. And, I want abundance. And I don't actually care what somebody wants. My work's a bit of a Trojan horse, in that whatever you want, you're going to be awakening and learning to love yourself. So whatever, bring whatever you want. You want more money, bring it. And so we worked on that. And in her mid 50s, it did take about a year of us working together and doing some intensive work. But about a year later, she went from that history of always being on the verge of bankruptcy and having bankruptcy twice to now she doesn't work at all, and she has $15,000 a month of residual income coming in. Yes. Right? And incredible. So that's the kind of results that I get. Sometimes it happens in a session. I had a guy last month contact me. He said, I'm in my 70s. My short-term memory has really gone big time. and my wife and I are fighting a lot because of it, and the relationship is strained. And she said, please see somebody and see if they can help. So he came to see me. We were going to do multiple sessions. We did one session, and then I went on vacation, and he went on vacation. So like a month passed, and he got back to me a month later. He said, I don't need any more sessions. My memory is fine now. My wife and I are getting along great. So sometimes it can happen quick. Sometimes it takes a while, and I never know. But it doesn't matter what people are bringing, whether it's wanting to live their life purpose, or wanting to have financial abundance, or wanting a soulmate, or wanting the relationship that they're in to be better, or it's they want to experience unity with all that is, oneness, and awaken to their true nature. It doesn't really matter. This work I have seen in every category what people would call a miracle.
Mhm.
And that's kind of every day for me, in a sense. So yeah, that's exciting. Like, I'm passionate about that. Like,
It
a
is
woman
exciting.
comes to me with a heart deformality, and they tell her she has 6 months to live, and they can't have any more open heart surgeries because it would kill her. And we work together, and then she lives for 10 to 15 years. She goes back to her doctor, and they tell her heart is perfectly normal.
Wow, incredible.
This work can, when you go into becoming one with yourself, it is a mystical experience. And in that mystical experience, everything that has ever happened or ever will happen or could possibly happen is all available. It's what quantum physics is telling us now. We're living, there are an infinite number of parallel universes that are coexisting at the same time. And people want to have mystical experiences where they can jump from one timeline to another, from one version of themselves to another. And I used to take people to sacred sites all the time to do that. And then I still do, but I also discovered that you are the sacred site.
Yes. Yes.
You are the experience that you've been seeking, but you have to become intimate with yourself to experience that.
Gorgeous. It's so true.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Magick, so much for your passion, excitement, your work in the world. Thank you, Dawn, for your passion, excitement, and work in the world.
Yeah,
I'm
thank
so
you,
grateful.
Trish, for your passion and excitement and work in the world. We all align here.
Yeah, so beautiful.
It is.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Magick, and sharing your process, your method, and your heart, your care for us in the world. Like, that's magic.
Thank you both. Thank you guys for having this show and being committed to helping people to love themselves and to make the world a more loving and better place, and spreading your high vibes and teachings and your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. We really do hold that dear to our hearts, of really helping each soul awaken to the authentic self. And it's through all the tools and practices that we all share, right? That's the journey. We're all on that journey of awakening as a spiritual being living in a human body.
Yeah, so, and I love doing shows like this, because I would do this whether I got paid or not. In fact, for the first 11 years that I was teaching, I was not making any money. I was volunteering for my teacher and for other teachers in other schools. And it was like almost every weekend and multiple nights a week, I was teaching, and I was teaching just because that's what I'm here to do. And that's what I love. So I do, every month I do a free talk, and I love it. And I call it Magick Talks. And so I just pick a different topic. It could be the topic of, traveling through time, because I've had a lot of mystical experiences working with shamans and kahuna over the years. Awakening your psychic senses, or self-love, or death. What is that? How is death actually one of our most important portals into a full life that we want to live? How to heal, like all these different topics. And it's free, and it's a transmission, and people often experience change from being on that call. So if any of your viewers are interested in listening to those, my next one is February 9th, and it's similar to this. the subject of that call is finding your greatest love, you. And that's right before Valentine's Day, you know, because we get fixated on others during that time. So, and then on March 16th, I'm going to go deeper into the oneness technique, the oneness method. And that to get to that call, you can go to my website, which is sacredvoyages.com. And then you can go to /Magick Talks. And Magic is spelled Magick. Or you can click on, I think there's a Magick Talks link there.
We just posted it in the comments box.
Oh, cool. Yeah, great. And I do coaching work and I do private retreats. Like if somebody wants to come to Maui and spend a day or a week with me, I do private retreats. And I do group retreats too. And I'm having one in Mount Shasta in July and one in Maui in October, assuming that retreats like that are happening. You know, COVID has shifted.
Yes. Amazing. Thank you for that.
I wanted to just say one more thing. If you have questions about anything about it, because I went through the technique, you know, fairly quickly, and there's so much nuance to it. So if somebody, I hope you try to practice it in your own way. But if you have questions, I'm also happy to answer questions. So shoot me an email. It's awaken@sacredvoyages.com. That's it's awaken, not awakened. So it's awaken@sacredvoyages.com. And I'm happy to answer questions for you and, you know, help you find your way through the process.
Thank you for such generous offerings.
Thank you guys. Yeah. It's been great. I really enjoyed being with you guys.
Yes, us too. You're lovely, and I just support your work in the world so much. Like, thank you for you're a gem, Magick, and your name fits you so perfectly. Like, truly.
Thank you. That's another day how I got that name. That's an interesting story. But yeah, I love it. It's me. It feels like me. It feels like I was born with that name.
Resonates so deeply
I can't wait
for
to
me.
get
Everything you shared. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, I just want to say thank you as well.
Thank
you to all of our viewers and our listeners, and we will be back to next week on Thursday. Woo! Thank you all.
Such an amazing show today. Thank you, Magick. Thank you, all our viewers.
Thank you, everyone.